Hello everyone, now we'll be taking the considerations of all the internal security questions that have been asked in GS paper 3 this year. This year they have asked 4 questions from internal security, 4 direct questions in fact from internal security. Let's see what those questions are. Now, first was with reference to this organized crime, discuss the types of the organized crimes and describe the linkages between the terrorist and the organized crime that exist at the national and the transnational level. Now, when we talk about these organized crimes, so these organized crimes are highly sophisticated, diversified, as well as widespread in nature. Every year they are draining billions of dollars from the global economy. Now, when we talk about this organized crime, it basically refers to a kind of crime that has been committed by a group of 3 or more people, and such a group has not been in a random existence. That means it has been formed for quite some time. And they are performing here, they are indulging into a number of criminal activities which are punishable for more than 4 years of imprisonment. Now, organized crimes accordingly can be characterized as traditional organized crimes as well as non-traditional organized crime. Traditional organized crimes refers to this illicit liquor trade, betting, gambling, extortions, abductions, kidnappings, prostitutions. Now, non-traditional organized crime include money laundering, circulation of fake currencies, hawala transfer, etc. Now, if we can talk about a few of the organized crimes or few of the major organized crimes, first like drug trafficking. This drug trafficking is the most serious organized crime that has been affecting the country, and it is truly transnational in character. Now, why drug trafficking is so frequent with respect to the Indian subcontinent is because perhaps of the geographical position of India between the region of Golden Triangle as well as Golden Crescent. India acts as a transit point. Further around, as per one of the reports by Ministry of Home Affairs, there are around 40 lakhs drug addicts in India. And the drug trafficking in India can be greatly attributed to the poor drug trafficking laws, like we have an act called NDPS Act 1985, but it has been poorly implemented by majority of state. As well as the conviction rate with respect to this drugs issues or this drug trafficking issue, it is very low or significantly very low. Along with that, the criminal justice system to a greater extent has failed to address the issue of drug trafficking. As a result, it is quite prevalent with respect to the Indian subcontinent. Second issue can be with respect to the smuggling, which is a kind of clandestine act, or it consists of a kind of clandestine operations. Why the smuggling is very high? Because of the demand of those illegal products in the international market. Now, along with that, advent of the technologies like internet as well as this social media platforms to a greater extent have also contributed in the spread of the smuggling. Porous borders are the one which are further contributing to the smuggling. Like in case of India, we can take the example of the smuggling that is taking place from the Bangladesh border, the Nepal border, which has eventually resulting in the loss of hundreds of crores annually because of this act of smuggling. Now, there is another issue of money laundering also. Money laundering basically aims at concealing the origin of the black money or that money that has been earned from the illegal sources. In fact, illegal sources like drug trafficking is one such source, or we can say one of the primary source with reference to money laundering. Again, there is an issue of hawala also, which are a kind of trust-based financial systems where you can deposit the money at one place and accordingly take out the money at the other place also. In the series, prostitution is another organized crime, whereas you can say that trading in the sex as well as girl running is a very profitable business with respect to these organized criminals. And you see further, if we talk about prostitution, so in prostitution there has also been an involvement of the underworld directly or indirectly, which is majorly responsible for handling or operating these sex rackets or the call girl rackets in India. As per the report of IHO, Indian Health Organization, there are around 10 lakhs of prostitutes in Mumbai alone and 40,000 each in the Delhi, Kolkata as well as in Pune. Now, kidnapping for ransom is also a highly organized crime that you will see in the urban conglomerates. Now, it is more specifically, it is based on the close coordination between a number of the interstate gangs which are acting and relying onto each other. Now, contract killing is another issue with reference to these organized crimes or another type of organized crime. See, the contract killings or the conviction rate with respect to this IPC 302 is very low in case of India, or I can say significantly low, and amounts to around 38%, which has further, why it has been a possibility because of the anonymous nature of the contract killings, and these contract killings are the one which are also highly utilized by the terror outfits. Now let's see what is the linkage between the organized crimes as well as the terrorism. If I say these are a kind of co-joint twins and both are complementary to the existence of each other. Now, one by one. First is black hole syndrome. When we talk about black hole syndrome, it refers to the natural transgression. It refers to the natural transgression of terrorism or organized crimes like drug trafficking, which eventually takes over the economy or the polity of a country. It's a natural transgression. One such example, in fact, the best cited example for the purpose could be Afghanistan. Ever since the capture of Afghanistan by the Taliban, this narco market has now been turned into $1 million business by these Talibanis. So this is what? This is a kind of black hole syndrome, and accordingly, that money is the one which is used for financing the terror activities over there. Now, another aspect could be terrorism and organized crimes. As I've said, that they are a kind of conjoined twins, and they pose a very great threat to the world by their syndicates as well as by their deadly effect, and a lot of similarities that they are sharing in terms of organizational structure, in terms of anonymity, in terms of violence as the primary weapon, in terms of their transnational characters, etc. These terror groups are the one which are in need of arms as well as in money to fight against the security forces, and therefore these organized criminals and the terror groups becomes the clients of each other. These organized groups smuggle arms, drugs, cattle, humans to generate the money for the terrorist group. This is how these organized groups or the organized criminals are the one which are linked to the terror outfits. Like, if we can talk about a few of the events with respect to India, the terror organizations in India, especially in the Northeast, they mobilize the funds by becoming the couriers of illegal drugs and arms, and at times even the human beings. That means they are involved in the events of human trafficking also from one point to another within the country. Now, with reference to the Jammu and Kashmir, this counterfeit currency has been a major source of funding the terrorism. Money laundering plays a very significant role. You see, Hawala, that is again a trust-based financial system. These transactions are taking place swiftly as well as effectively in the state of Kashmir. Now, with reference to this Maoist terror movements, extortion is another very common phenomenon, where they have also indulged in the robberies of the banks to fund their movement. Extortions are also followed by abductions, they are also followed by kidnappings, etc. So overall, if we can see, that terrorists are the one which are always in need of money, and this money to a greater extent is also supplied by these organized criminals or these organized crimes. As a result, both are very complementary to the existence of each other. Now, with reference to tackling this organized criminal, as well as you can say breaking the nexus between the organized crimes and the terrorism, improved intelligence is the most important task because of the anonymous nature or the anonymous behavior of these organized criminals as well as terrorists. How it will be a possibility? By strong local intelligence, by separating the law and order functions and investigation functions of the police, cooperation of the international organization. There is a dire need to arrive to a global strategy to tackle the menace of organized crimes as well as terrorism, as well as improving the criminal justice system, are some sort of reforms that are needed to curb the organized crimes, or we can say to tackle the nexus between the organized crimes as well as the terrorism. Now the next question that they have asked is with reference to this maritime security. Again, it's a direct question. What are the maritime security challenges in India? Discuss the organizational, technical as well as the procedural initiatives to improve the maritime security. Now when we talk about maritime security, in the modern time, the maritime security is not solely a matter of the national security, but in fact it also involves the issues like maritime, or you can say marine environment, economic development, human security, etc. Beside the world oceans, now the regional seas, territorial waters and rivers as well as ports, etc. also forms the core component of the maritime security. Now let's see certain set of maritime challenges with reference to India. First is the transnational organized crimes. Transnational organized crimes, here you see the waters are also used for the transnational organized crime that inflict harm on the global economy as well as they also jeopardize this security of the state. This includes the events like the illicit trafficking, more specifically in the narcotic drugs as well as the psychotropic substances, trafficking of the persons, illicit trafficking in the firearms, etc. Now the second issue is of maritime terrorism, and why maritime terrorism is important with reference to the maritime securities, because we have already been a victim of maritime terrorism. You see this event of 26/11, the day of Mumbai terror attack. One of the major reasons that can be responsible for this 26/11 was the failure of our coastal security network. Now India is having a very huge coastline and with thriving opportunity for the maritime commercial activities, with a huge population of around 2 lakhs of with a huge number of 2 lakhs of boats, along with 4 million, something around 40 lakhs of fishermen population. Now this job, or you can say this job of monitoring, is going to be a very complicated affair. Now another issue with reference to the India's maritime security is the matter of regional instability. This Indian Ocean littoral has been witness to a number of events of political instability like Yemen, Indonesia, Somalia, and the recent issue of Sri Lanka, Iran, Iraq also. So that also poses a great threat to the Indian maritime security. Now the another issue with reference to the maritime challenges could be of Chinese strategies. As you see, China do not recognize Indo-Pacific as one, but it considered both the oceans as the key areas of its interest. That itself possesses a very huge challenge. Why? You see, China has got two different strategies for the Indian as well as this Pacific Ocean. In this Western Pacific, the core interest of the China, as a result, it has a full spectrum dominance strategy with reference to this Western Pacific. It is a reason where China prefers to deploy or enforce these gray zone operations, and they are using the terms like incremental takeover of the territory. But with reference to this Indian Ocean, the China uses a term that is called as stakeholdership, and for gradually increasing their presence in this particular region. You see, there is something we call as international relations, string of pearls. So these are a kind of threats that are existing with reference to the Indian maritime security as regards the China's approach or the Chinese strategies for that matters are concerned. Now, along with that, there is another issue of pirates. These pirates, it is again a very persistent threat, specifically around this Somali coast. This further jeopardizes this trade as well as the commerce activities over there. Now let's talk about the counter mechanisms to deal with these maritime security challenges. First, let's talk about the organizational structures where Indian Navy acts as the net security provider in the maritime neighborhood. That includes the deployments of anti-piracy, maritime security, and non-combat evacuation operations and humanitarian assistances and disaster relief operations. Along with that, we have coast guards, which protects the India's exclusive economic zones from any kind of criminals, pirates, smugglers, poachers, human traffickers, and any kind of subversion on part of the foreign activities. It is also responsible for carrying out the rescue missions in India's search and rescue zone. Along with that, it is also engaged in developing bilateral as well as multilateral cooperation. Now, we have the concept of coastal police also, which is confining its activity to largely to a coastal waters up to 24 nautical miles with the help and in the close coordination with the other agencies. It also has a surveillance network that comprises of coastal villagers, CISF personnel, and the data from the radar chain and the sensors installed on the sailing vessels. Now, along with that, we have customs marine organizations that has been created following the recommendations of this Nag Chaudhary committee. Now, with reference to this technical structure, we have a multi-layered surveillance system, and in this multi-layered surveillance system, the responsibility of Navy, Coast Guard as well as the Marine Police are the one which are fixed. Like for the outer layer that is beyond the 200 nautical miles, that is something which is patrolled by the Indian naval ships and the aircrafts. For the intermediate layers, that means from 12 to 200 nautical miles, they are patrolled by the Indian Coast Guard. And accordingly, the innermost layer, that means shorelines up to 12 nautical miles, are the one which are patrolled by the Marine Police. Then we have the coastal surveillance network, which is comprising of the static sensors along the coast, automatic identification system, that is the AIS system, long range tracking, day-night cameras and communication devices are the one which have also been placed or deployed at the places. Then we have vessel traffic management system, VTMS. These radars are the one which are installed on all the major and the minor ports to facilitate the further surveillance. Then we have the commissioning of Information Management and Analysis Center IMAC at Gurgaon to easily collect as well as disseminate the information, more specifically information pertaining to the shipping data for increased awareness. The Navy has also established the Information Fusion Center for the Indian Ocean region. Now, what is the purpose? The purpose is 24/7 regional information sharing, more specifically for the commercial shipping. Now, along with that, enhance maritime domain awareness through National Command and Control Communication Intelligence Network, that is NC3I. It is an overarching coastal security network which collects as well as disseminates the data about all the ships, fishing boats and all other vessels operating near our coast. Now, these are merely the facts as regards this technical. Now, these are certain set of facts with reference to this technical infrastructure. Now, next is with reference to the procedural structure that is available with us. The procedural structure will include the operations like Operation Sagar Kavach that was put beyond, like post 26/11 situation to improve the coordination between various security agencies including Navy, Coast Guard as well as the local police. Apart from that, India also participates in the regional frameworks like Association of Southeast Asian Nations Regional Forum, which is referred as ARF in short, East Asian Summit, that is EAS, then is ASEAN Defense Minister Meeting plus ADMM plus to expand its cooperation and exchanges with the Indo-Pacific region. Then we have the coastal security schemes to strengthen the security infrastructure of the Marine Police Force in the coastal areas or the Union territories. You see, it was a direct question that was asked with reference to the coastal security. Now, let's move on to the third question that has been there with reference to the cyber security. Again, it's a direct question. What are the different elements of the cyber security? Keeping in view the challenges of the cyber security, examine the extent to which India has successfully developed its comprehensive national cyber security strategy. So, when we talk about cyber security, it aims at protecting the cyberspace that includes critical information infrastructure from any kind of attack, damage, misuse, as well as its economic espionage. Now, with reference to the elements of cyber security, there are 6 core elements of cyber security that can be highlighted as application security, information security, network security, disaster recovery planning, operational security, and end user education. Now let's talk about these elements of the cyber security in detail. When we talk about this application security is the first key element of the cyber security, which adds security features to the applications during the developmental period of this application, so that to prevent that particular application from any kind of cyber infections or cyber attacks when they are put to the public use. Second aspect is with reference to the information security or info security. It refers to the elements of cyber security which refers to the process and the methods for preventing the unauthorized access, use, disclosure, disruption, modification, or destruction of that particular information. Now, when we talk about this information security, so this information security tools could be IPS intrusion prevention system, it could be antivirus, it could be anti-malware, it could be window defenders, firewalls, etc. Now, let's talk about this network security. Network security is another element of IT security, which aims at preventing and protecting against unauthorized access into any computer network. Now, the next thing is with reference to this disaster recovery plan. Disaster recovery plan basically aims at resuming the activities after a cyber attack has taken place. Let's say there is a cyber attack which has eventually resulted in a destruction or disruption of the flow of the data. But eventually the cyber infection has taken place, it has done its part. So under this data recovery plan, we should have a mechanism, we should have a data backup so that we are able to put the system back on the restore. Now, next is operational security. It is an analytical and the risk management elements of cyber security. It identifies the organization's information and develops the protection mechanisms for that critical information infrastructure. That means it basically divides, or you can say segments the data, various data of an organization, and accordingly it is identifying them and it is preparing a separate plan with reference to protection of that particular data. Last is end user education. The end user education basically talks about the important element of the computer security, and here the most significant component is always going to be the awareness. It is always going to be the awareness. Now, the next question was with reference to the security mechanism or the available mechanism in India with reference to the cyber security. With reference to the cyber security, the available mechanisms can be categorized into the 3 categories. The available mechanism can be categorized into 3 categories. First is with reference to the policy framework. Second is with reference to the institutional framework. And third is with reference to the operational framework. Now, before we talk about to what extent have we completely developed a kind of security strategy, let's talk about this policy framework first. This Cyber Security Policy 2030. So, in the wake of this Snowden episode that took place in US, we decided to opt for our own cyber security policy in the year 2030. We had a policy in the year 2013, but this policy has been criticized on the grounds of being a very generic policy. It has been criticized on the grounds of being a very defensive policy. It has been criticized on the grounds of non-fulfillment of promises. Non-fulfillment of the promises that have been mandated as per the cyber security policy of 2030. Accordingly, we have evolved to a new cyber security policy 2020 draft. Yes, it's a very optimistic policy which to a greater extent has resolved all the lacunas that were there in the policy of 2013. But unfortunately, this policy remains in the form of draft. It has not been fully incorporated as of now. Now, along with that, with reference to IT Act, we have an IT Act, but this IT Act is an outdated act. It is an outdated act. Outdated means it fails to address the issue of national security as well as the issue of right to privacy. Now further, with reference to on part of the policy, with reference to India, we can talk about that we don't have a law of data localization. We don't have a law as of now with reference to the data localization. We don't have a law to fix the responsibilities of the data fiduciaries. Now, with reference to this institutional framework, we have institutions like certain Computer Emergency Response Team, India. Along with that, we have NCIIPC. Along with that, we have NCCC. Then we have institutions like I4C. Then we have institutions like NIB, National Information Board. Now, these institutions have been developed. To counter the challenges that are arising in India out of the cyber security. But the problem with these institutions is like overlapping of functions. Now, like certain as well as I4C are having overlapping functions. Now, along with that, lack of staff is another issue. No separate budget. Along with the no separate budget, low level of research and development. Poor capacity building. Though we have established these institutes, or though we have established these institutions to counter the cyber security challenges, but they are suffering from the grave challenges. That means they are merely existing on the piece of paper, but when we talk about the grassroots reality, they are suffering from a majority of the challenge. Now, same goes with reference to the operational framework also. Like in operational framework, we have NetGrid, we have CMS, we have CCTNS. Along with CCTNS, we have Nitra, we have Cyber Swachhata Kendras, toolkit on part of the Ministry of Electronics and Information Technology. Now, majority of this operational framework are the one which are non-functional. Majority of them are the one which are non-functional. Like NetGrid is a very optimistic project of Government of India with a corpus of rupees 3400 CR. It has been in existence since 2009. The idea of NetGrid for the first time was discussed in the year 2009, but as of now it has not been completed. Now, CMS, out of the CMS, we are having the concept of regional monitoring system. In the CMS, only 2 are functional out of the 11 RMCs. CCTNS, only 15,000 police stations of India are the one which are present on the CCTNS. It's a very optimistic grid of connecting all the police stations of the country on a single grid. Now, along with that, Netra is a software which is developed by DRDO, but unfortunately, Netra as of now is not functional. So, we have developed in terms of EIC, to what extent we have developed? Yes, we have developed a counter cyber crime strategy or counter cyber threat strategy to a greater extent. In terms of policy also, in terms of institution also, but in terms of operational framework also. But the major challenge that still remains with this is that majority of them are not implemented when it comes to the policy part. Majority of the institutions are the one which are suffering from a grave set of challenges that we have already seen. Majority of the operational frameworks are the one which are merely existing on the piece of paper, but they are not fully functional as of now. So with this we come to this end of discussion on this cyber security part. Now we come to the last part of the internal security, and that is this question with reference to Naturalism. Naturalism is a social, economic and developmental issue manifesting as a violent internal security threat. In this context, discuss the emerging issues, suggest a multi-layered strategy to tackle the menace of Naturalism. Now here we can start off directly with the definition part. That left-wing extremism, also known by another various names such as Naturalism and Maoism, is a form of armed insurgency against the state and which is motivated by the left ideology. These left-wing extremists, they are also known as Maoist globally, and more specifically with reference to India, they are known by the name Naxalites or the Naxals. Social factors responsible for Naxalism: haphazard tribal policy implementation on part of the government, like with reference to those social justice policies. Like one example that we can talk about is with reference to reservation. Even within the scheduled community or the scheduled tribes, the reservation is something which is restricted to only few communities, and it is something which is not percolating down to the lowermost strata. Another important aspects are with reference to the social exclusion, where they are victims of untouchability, caste-based discrimination, gender-based discrimination. Another issue is with reference to the intolerance towards the tribal autonomy by the state, and which eventually result in a kind of culture conflict between the state as well as the tribals. Now, then there are issues of agrarian community. That means, you see, most of the time, the government is the one which is not accepting their claims. They are not recognizing their traditional claims or traditional rights over those cultivable lands over there. So there is a kind of discontentment among the tribals with reference to these policies of the government. Now, along with that, there are certain economic factors, like economic factors, increase in the inter-regional and the intra-regional differences. That means lack of development. In majority of the states, like Chhattisgarh, where Jharkhand, the level of the industrial development is very poor. The Naxalism it's at peak. In fact, I can say Chhattisgarh as number 1 and Jharkhand number 2 in terms of reporting of the Naxal activities. Now, second is skewed distribution of land and the economic growth. Skewed distribution of land means the land is the one which is taken in the name of development, but they are not provided with appropriate compensation. Along with the appropriate compensation, there is another issue that they are subjected to displacement in the name of development, but there are not adequate opportunity which are provided for their rehab. Now then there is an issue of entry of mining companies into the tribal lands, posing a threat to their livelihood, of the tribes. Again, it can also be associated with the issue of displacement, that they are displaced in the name of development, but adequate of the opportunities are not provided for rehab. Then well-knitted linkage between the illegal mining industry in Chhattisgarh and Jharkhand. Yes, to a greater extent, the Naxalites are the one which are also involved in the illegal mining, and it is acting as one of the primary source of funds for the Naxal movement. Then there are issues of problems of poverty and economic inequality and underdevelopment in the Naxal regions, which to a greater extent has also resulted in fueling up of the Naxal, or you can say Naxalism. Now with reference to the developmental factors in the tribal areas, those tribal areas are having very poor infrastructure in terms of education, medical facility, government institution. They are technically absent from those areas. If we talk about grievance redressal mechanism, this grievance redressal mechanism is absent, and there is a concept of paper governance. There is a concept of headquarter governance. That means most of the policies are the one which are designed at the headquarter level, and they are not successfully implemented at the grassroots level. Then there is a poor reach of the criminal justice system, which has further resulted in the propagation of the concepts like Janta Sarkar. Janta Sarkar acts as what? Janta Sarkar acts as an alternative dispute redressal mechanism. It also acts an alternative criminal justice system for them. Then the poor participation in the electoral democracy. As regards their political participation is concerned, they are poorly represented as in the democratic setup. Most of the time it has happened that not even the elections were the one which were conducted in those tribal areas or the Naxal affected areas. Now, with reference to the question, let's see what are the emerging issues with reference to the Naxal movement. The emerging issues is first is of urban Naxalism. Though urban Naxals is a term of the political lexicon, it is something which is not defined as per the LWE division of the Ministry of Home Affairs. But urban Naxals, as coined by the Maharashtra government, refers to the sympathizers of Naxal movement. Sympathizers of this Naxal movement, and these sympathizers, they tend to provide a kind of front organizations to raise the issue of tribals, and in the name of raising the issue of tribals, they are indirectly giving the support to the Naxalites also. They provide them the legal safe houses also. They try to raise the funds for them also. Along with that, they provide them the shelter houses also. Propagation of their narratives also to gain the empathy. So these are certain set of roles that have also been highlighted with reference to Naxal movement. Like one case that can be mentioned with reference to that is of Elgar Parishad case, where in one of the FIR filed by the Pune police for that matter, they have said that in this Elgar Parishad was the one which was organized with the support of this banned CPI Maoist group. Now, another issue is in emerging issue these days with reference to Naxal movement is revival of lost strength. That means reorganization strength. That means to a greater extent during the time of this COVID-19 scenario. During the time of this COVID-19 scenario, this nationwide lockdown, it significantly impacted the already strained Maoist supply chains, which further weakened their strengths and operational capacity. But after the COVID situation, they have again resorted to the mobilization of their strength. Now, along with that, but as per the government of India's data, their number is something which has significantly reduced. As per the last year's data of 2021, there are only 46 districts which are under the grip of Naxalism as per the recent data available by Ministry of Home Affairs. Now, there has also been an increase in the mass surrenders in the late 2020s and early 2021 also, as a part of the surrender cum rehab policy of the government of India. Now, what could be the multi-layered strategy to tackle the Naxalism? This multi-layered strategy can be divided into two parts. First is state by state approach. First is state by state approach, and second is Government of India's approach. Second is Government of India's approach. Now, this state by state approach, it deals with, like if we can talk about few states, Andhra Pradesh. Andhra Pradesh has developed Greyhound as an anti-Naxal force. They have developed Greyhound as an anti-Naxal force. Now, along with Greyhound, they have also focused on police modernization. They have also focused on police modernization. They have also focused on infrastructural development. Infrastructural development. They are also having a very unique surrender and rehab policy. They are having a very unique surrender and rehab policy. Now, along with the surrender and rehab policy, the government is the one, the Andhra Pradesh government is the one which is also imparting these surrendered Naxalites with appropriate skills so that they can lead a life of prosperity in the years to come. Now, similarly, if we can talk about other states like West Bengal, West Bengal is having a very unique 3-point strategy to deal with the Naxalism. Now, this 3-point strategy of West Bengal, it initially starts with the modernization of the police forces. Modernization of the police forces. Now, first is modernization of the police forces, and then it talks about the confidence building measures among the tribal people. Then they are also having a very unique surrender and rehab policy as a part of this 3-point strategy. Now, then there are, you can say, state of Jharkhand. Jharkhand has also developed a force, an anti-Naxal force called Jaguar. They have also developed a kind of anti-Naxal force called Jaguar, and this operational force to a greater extent has been a successful force in dealing with the Naxalism or Naxal activities on those areas, more specifically the areas like Saranda of 2011. So this is, you see, how the states, different states are the one which have adopted their own policies with reference to tackling the menace of this Naxalism. Now, if we talk about Government of India's approach can be divided into coin strategy, and another is Samadhan. Now, coin strategy was adopted at the time of UPA second, and this Samadhan was adopted at the time of NDA second. Now, counter-insurgency strategy, it is basically an umbrella term that is used for a number of schemes altogether. Number of schemes, like it includes police modernization scheme, it includes special infrastructure scheme, it includes security related expenditure scheme. Now, if we can talk about the Samadhan Doctrine, it stands for smart leadership, aggressive strategy, motivation and training, actionable intelligence, and dashboard for key performance indicator, harnessing technology, action plan for each theater, Now, and the last is no access to financing. So, if we can talk about the Samadhan, so Samadhan is basically an integrated approach that also talks about the smart leadership, aggressive strategy on one part, and then they also believe in cutting down the financial lines of these Naxalites or the Maoists by no access to financing. Then it also talks about the key performance indicators, that means the developmental aspect, the infrastructural developmental aspect, that can be in terms of the building the bridges, that can be in terms of building the roads, that can be in terms of building the health institutions or extending the educational facilities to such areas. Now, it also aims at actionable intelligence. That means human intelligence plays a very important role. Establishment of MAC as well as SMAC with a sound infrastructure with reference to this human intelligence. It also emphasizes on those aspects. It also includes the use of technology. Drones are the one which are deployed in those Naxal affected areas. Action plan for each of the theaters, that means they will be segregating the various Naxal affected areas, and accordingly the action plan is the one which will be prepared or deployed for the same. So overall, if we can have a conclusive remark on it, we can say that in order to tackle the Naxalism, the government has to follow a comprehensive approach. They need to devise a multi-layered strategy that not only focuses on building a sound counter infrastructure to deal with the menace of Naxalism, but it should simultaneously look after those economic, social as well as political developmental factors, which to a greater extent has been responsible for fueling the Naxal activities in the country. With this, we come to the end of this discussion with reference to the internal security questions.